I've been a nonprofit professional for over 35 years, and I can tell you this is the toughest I've ever seen it in terms of fundraising for grants. Now, I want to tell you why we're having this problem, but then I want to give you 7 tips for surviving the grant drought. I'm going to talk fast. If you have a hard time listening that fast, you can check out my webinar or my blog where I go into all of this in more detail. So let's hit the reasons why we're having this problem. Now, some of these problems have happened over time. We kind of expected them, but they're all hitting at once. Number one, the number of nonprofits is outpacing the number of funders tremendously. We have almost 2 million nonprofits in the United States right now. We don't have nearly enough funders to fund all of them. So that is causing a backlog of funding. Now, there's also an increase in terms of people who have money and want to give money away. Instead of starting a family foundation like they might have done 20 years ago, more and more of these donors are turning to donor-advised funds. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what those are and how they work, but needless to say, they're harder to research and harder to get grants from. Now, another huge one that we are dealing with is back in the COVID days, the federal government released $1.9 trillion in ARPA funds to try to offset some of the economic problems tied to COVID. So we were really flooded with grants for several years. Those are drying up. All the money has to be spent by 2026. So that means really everything has already been committed and there's no new grants coming through for those ARPA funds. Now, in addition to these things that have kind of been happening over time, they're not really unexpected. We have had several things that are kind of sudden and unexpected in 2025. First of all, we've had some new federal legislation in terms of taxes. There have been some incentives that are going to make it easier for individuals and families to give small donations to nonprofits. Yay! But at the same time, they also reduced all of the incentives for large donors to give money to nonprofits. So boo. Overall, those don't just cancel each other out. In fact, nonprofits are going to be the big losers on that. In fact, it's I think they said about $5 billion over the next 10 years is what nonprofits are going to lose because of that. Now, adding to that is some of the volatility of the market between tariffs and the stock market and everything else. A lot of times foundations that get their money from the stock market kind of get nervous about giving away that full 5% they have to give each year. They maybe want to wait and hold back because they can average it over 5 years. So maybe they don't give the whole amount. On top of the market not doing well, we've also got all of these executive orders. So since January 20th, there have been over 50 different executive orders that are just causing chaos in the nonprofit world. It has also taken away funding from a lot of organizations that are just very traditionally funded by the federal government, like public media. So PBS and all those little PBS stations and NPR stations around the country, instead of getting money from the federal government, they are now having to go get money from private donors. So that is flooding the market as well. We are also seeing a trend of individual giving is going down. After years and decades of individual giving going up and up and up, we're now seeing it going back down. Individuals are giving less than they have in the past. In addition to that, they're also volunteering fewer hours, which means nonprofits have to try to hire somebody to do the work they used to get volunteers for. It's causing a lot of problems. Another issue that we're having that's really impacting everyone right now is AI. And I know everybody gets so sick of hearing about AI all the time. I'm not going to talk about all of the ethical and high quality and ecological issues tied to using AI. I am going to tell you that AI is being used by a lot of nonprofits to produce grant applications that they are sending, and it's flooding the market. A lot of times these applications are not particularly good, but the funders still have to work through them, and it's slowing down that funnel. So here are the 7 tips for surviving this grant drought. Number 1, lower expectations. Now, I don't mean lower your own expectations. I mean you may have to manage the expectations of the stakeholders you're working with, whether that's an executive director, a board of directors, whoever it is, you are going to have to manage their expectations, meaning share this information with them, help them understand that grants are really tough right now. Donations overall are really tough right now. And if you go to the link below, I do have a letter template that you can use for your own organization so you can communicate these things to your stakeholders and help manage their expectations. Number 2, make sure you're being a good steward for the donations and the grants that you have right now. Now is the time to make sure that the donors you've got today are not going anywhere. So make sure you are staying in touch with them. Do more than just send them a report. Invite them to come see your program. Call them now and then. Maintain that relationship with your current donors. Also make sure that you are following all of their rules and doing everything you are supposed to do. Number 3, improve the quality of the grant proposals you are sending out. Make sure that you have read the instructions, that you have made a really good case for why your mission is so important to your community, that you're talking about how you are solving the problem and how you know you're using best practices and that you have the best people and how the donation or the grant that you're going to get is going to make a difference in making the world a better place. Number 4, and I hesitate to say this because I want to give you a warning in addition to it, but number 4 is to increase the quantity of your grants. Grants really are a numbers game. The more proposals you put out there, the more likely you are to get a grant. I know, it's crazy, right? The warning I want to give you, though, is don't just blanket funders, every funder in your state, with a grant application. That is not a good way to pursue grants. These need to be high-quality grants that are targeted toward a specific donor that you know is a good fit for your organization and one that you have already developed a relationship with. Number 5, look at your funding pie. Every organization, every nonprofit has a variety of sources of funding, or it should, in order to be balanced. So this might come from revenues for the services that you have, individual donations, fundraising events, your end of the year campaign, and grants. If you are relying on grants to fill your budget hole, that's not a good strategy. Grants are slow money. They're not fast money. So look at your funding pie and see what percentage comes from grants and what's a realistic increase that you can look at. Number 6, cultivate relationships with future funders and future donors. Fundraising is all about relationships, and grants are a form of fundraising. So you've got to develop relationships with those people before you ever ask them for a grant. You need to just build that relationship. And I've got some tips for how to do that fairly painlessly, even if you're an introvert, linked in the article in the blog below. And number 7, make sure that you stay organized with all of your grant seeking activity. If you've got everything at your fingertips, you can put together a grant application very quickly, even if it's just a letter of intent for a particular funder. So a great way to do this is, of course, through Grant Holster, but there are lots of different ways that you can organize your organizational information. So check out my blog, check out the website, and good luck, Hotshot.